Hello everyone, it's Samir here, and today we will look at a new problem which is not that difficult, but it has sort of traps. It can trap you at one or two places and lead you towards a wrong answer. Okay, so we'll see the problem. It says that find the sum of all the roots of the equation 3 cot square x plus 8 cot x plus 3 equal to 0 in 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so this is a quadratic in cot x. Okay, but roots will be in x. Okay, so we have to find all the roots of x, not cot x. Okay, so from the information that is given to us, what is clearly visible is that it is a quadratic where sum of roots is negative. It will be minus 8 by 3. Okay, so cot x1 plus cot x2 will be minus 8 by 3. Okay, roots of this quadratic will be cot x1 and cot x2, and the multiplication cot x1 multiplied by cot x2 will be 1 because c by a is 1. So since the product is positive and sum is negative, so we know that both cot x1 and cot x2 are negative. Okay, and of course you know that you are going to get two values of cot x1 and cot x2. And as of now, you should not start calculating the values of cot x1 and cot x2 to find x1 and x2. This is one of the first trap which can involve you in a very long solving session without yielding much results. Okay, so the roots of this are cot x1 and cot x2, both are negative. Okay, so the principal values of x1 and x2, okay, corresponding to cot x1 value there will be value x1, corresponding to cot x2 there will be x2, and they will lie between 0 and pi. But since cot x is a periodic function with period pi, okay, so there will be other roots between pi to 2 pi, and overall we have to find the solution between 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so it would be something like this. Since cot x is negative, it would be somewhere here. You say cot x1, something like this. Okay, then maybe cot x2, something like this. Both are negative. Now corresponding to this cot x1, you will have a value here which will be x1, and corresponding to cot x2 you will have another value x2. Okay, so from cot x1 and cot x2 you will get values x1 and x2. Okay, now the same value that cot x1 cot x2 is getting, it will get after pi also. Okay, so the roots for x will not be 2. Between 0 to pi you can see that x can take two values x1 and x2, but between 0 to 2 pi it will take four values. Okay, so you see this in this animation. You draw the cot curve, cot x1 and cot x2 come on negative, corresponding you get x1 x2, and you get another value x1 plus pi and x2 plus pi, which will give same value of cot x1 and cot x2. So the roots that are going to come between pi and 2 pi, we call them x3 and x4. So x3 will be x1 plus pi. Okay, you move x1 by pi here, you will get same value of cot x1, something like this. If we draw, something like this. Okay, so corresponding to this value you get some x1, corresponding to this value you get x3. Okay, similarly corresponding to cot x2 you will get x2, and another you will get x4 somewhere here. Okay, so x3 is x1 plus pi and x4 is x2 plus pi. Okay, since period of cot x is pi. Okay, so once you get this thing, so the sum of roots that we are looking for will be x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus x4. Okay, so x3 we put as x1 plus pi, x4 we put as x2 plus pi. So this will come as 2 times x1 plus x2 plus 2 pi. Okay, so now our task is to find x1 plus x2. Okay, and this also we can find without finding cot x1 and cot x2. So how do we find x1 plus x2? From the given equation, we will try to find x1 plus x2 directly. Okay, so we'll put cot x1 plus x2's formula. So cot x1 plus x2 gives cot x1 cot x2 minus 1 whole upon cot x1 plus cot x2. Now we know that cot x1 multiplied by cot x2 is 1 from the given equation. Okay. So since cot x1 into cot x2 is 1, this numerator becomes 0 and cot of x1 plus x2 comes out to be 0. Now this is another trap that most students would place x1 plus x2 as pi by 2 because cot x becomes 0 at pi by 2. Okay. But we should observe here that both x1 and x2 are more than pi by 2. Okay. So x1 plus x2 cannot be pi by 2. Okay. This cannot be pi by 2. Okay. So x1 plus x2 will have to be, pi by 2 plus k pi. Okay. So we'll add pi here. Okay, to this pi by 2 because cot 3 pi by 2 is also 0. So x1 plus x2 will come out to be 3 pi by 2. Okay, since both the values are between pi by 2 and pi. So once we have got the value of x1 plus x2, now it's like pretty direct method to get our answer. So sum of all the roots was 2 times x1 plus x2 plus 2 pi. So we put this value of x1 plus x2 here, 3 pi by 2, and you get the answer as 5 pi. Okay. So hope you understood the methodology. This didn't require us to solve the quadratic that was given and didn't require us to solve any trigonometric equation as well. It was just a graphical interpretation and knowing that the same values of cot gets repeated after every pi value. So the crux here is that observing the properties of the given equation or the given conditions in a problem is more important than just solving it. This saves a lot of time, gives you a deep insight, makes you more confident in solving problems.